It feels like a lot of us are sensing something building in the world today, like a momentum maybe. There's this feeling that, well, big things are happening.
Definitely a sense of unease, or perhaps significance for some.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a source that has a very specific take on all this. We're exploring parts of the time is near, signs of Christ's return.
Right.
And just to be clear up front, our goal here is really to unpack what this material claims, its unique perspective, to help you understand how it views current events, not necessarily endorsing it, but understanding it.
Yeah, that's important. And the core idea in this material, it looks at global conflicts,
Yeah.
especially the tension between, say, Israel and Iran. And it doesn't just see politics.
Okay, what does it see?
It calls it prophetic tension, or even heavenly alarms. So these aren't just footnotes in prophecy fulfillment. The source views events like this one as direct countdown signals.
Yeah.
Geopolitics become heavenly alarms that need immediate attention in its view.
Heavenly alarms, that's strong language.
It is. And it connects this directly to Matthew 24, verses 6 to 8, where Jesus talks about wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, famines, earthquakes.
Right, the classic signs passages.
Exactly. The source labels these the beginning of birth pains.
Mm.
And the idea is that these pains, these events, will get more frequent, more intense.
Signaling that something big, what it calls the crowning moment, is getting closer.
Precisely. That's the framing.
That's quite an intense lens for looking at the news. Now, as we were digging into the time is near, something really jumped out. It's how it handles that phrase. No one knows the day or the hour. From Matthew 24 again.
Ah, yes. That's a key point in the material.
It is. Because the source argues this isn't just a general nobody knows. It claims it's actually a specific Jewish idiom.
An idiom? For what?
For the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. Apparently, that feast was unique because it started right when the new moon was sighted. So nobody knew the exact hour beforehand.
Okay, I see where it's going. So the uncertainty wasn't absolute unknowability, but rather an imminent event requiring readiness.
That seems to be the interpretation, yeah. It shifts the meaning towards, like, active watchfulness.
Yeah.
Does the source explain why it lands so firmly on this idiom interpretation and what that means for, well, how people should live now?
It does. It argues this interpretation changes everything. It moves it from we can't know, so don't worry, to it's imminent, so be constantly vigilant.
Vigilant. How so?
Well, building on that, the source really anchors this in 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 1 to 4.
Yeah.
The bit about the day of the Lord coming like a thief in the night.
Hmm.
But, and this is crucial for the source's argument, it says that applies to the world, to those in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Believers, who it calls the awakened bride, are supposedly not in darkness. They shouldn't be caught by surprise.
Ah, okay. So it creates this contrast between the clueless, as the source puts it, and the watchful. It really raises the stakes on being prepared, on discernment.
Exactly. Preparedness is central.
And maybe this is a good moment just to reiterate for everyone listening. We're really just laying out the ideas from this specific source.
Right. Exploration, not endorsement.
Yeah. Our goal is just to help you understand its perspective. This whole deep dive is about understanding one particular attempt to interpret the signs of the times. Remember how Jesus in Matthew 16 kind of called out the leaders for reading the weather, but not the signs?
Yeah. A call for spiritual discernment.
Right. And this source is definitely offering its interpretation of those signs, and it makes them seem very, very immediate.
It certainly does.
So let's try to tie these threads together. What's the main message that the time is near is putting forward?
Fundamentally, it's saying the world stage is aligning almost perfectly with biblical prophecy right now.
Okay, like how? What specifics does it point to?
Well, it highlights Israel being right at the center of global conflict. It points to Zechariah 12.3, which talks about Jerusalem becoming an immovable rock for all nations.
Okay, so the focus on Israel is key.
Very key. Also, just general geopolitical maneuvering, nations posturing for power. That's seen as part of the picture. But then there's a really striking claim it makes about technology.
The mark of the beast connection, Revelation 13.
Exactly. The source argues that the technology needed for such a system, it's not future speculation anymore. It claims it's basically here.
Wow. How does it make that connection? Between prophecies written centuries ago and, like, smartphones or digital ID?
Well, it points to things like the potential for cashless societies, global digital currencies, biometric identification becoming widespread, maybe universal ID systems.
Stuff we see developing now.
Right. It views these not as random tech trends, but as the literal infrastructure being laid for that kind of global economic control described in Revelation, it makes a fulfillment seem, well, potentially very close.
That's pretty chilling, depending on how you look at it.
It is. And woven through all these interpretations of science and technology, there's one huge event the material keeps pointing towards, the rapture. It calls it the next major event on God's prophetic calendar. And it uses that language from 1 Corinthians 15, happening in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye.
So the source presents itself almost like a warning signal.
Yeah, it describes its own message as a kind of trumpet sound in your spirit, affirming its central claim that, quoting Matthew 24:33, the return of Jesus is not just near, it's at the door.
And given that urgency, what does it say believers should do? What's the call to action?
It's pretty demanding, actually. It says things like, live like you're leaving.
I'll live like you're leaving.
And then don't just look for the signs. Be a sign. Be active, not passive.
Be a sign, like an example.
Seems so. It urges people to be the light, be the voice, be the bride who is watching, waiting, and working until he comes. It's very action-oriented.
And it culminates with that line, doesn't it? When that trumpet sounds, only those who are ready will rise. Puts a sharp point on it.
It really does. It brings everything back to this core theme.
Mm-hmm.
Readiness, watchfulness. It's not just about, knowing prophecies intellectually. It's about letting that knowledge radically shape how you live day to day.
So this deep dive, looking closely at this one specific prophetic viewpoint, it does more than just show you one way people are interpreting world events right now.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of forces you to think about that whole concept of readiness itself, doesn't it? Whatever you believe about the specifics, it prompts that personal question. What does it mean for me to be prepared? Whether that's spiritually or maybe even just personally for uncertain times ahead.
It definitely pushes that question to the forefront.
And the source leaves us with that ancient Aramaic phrase, Maranatha.
Come, Lord Jesus.
Indeed. Gives you something to think about.